I shall never forget that phone call. My daughter told me I wasn't needed anymore, just like that, after all these years. It was a cold night in winter, one of those nights where even the air seems to freeze the soul. I sat in my study, the fire crackling softly in the corner. The weight of the silence in the house was unbearable, too empty, too hollow. Sarah had been gone for a year, and without her, this place felt like a shell. She was the only one who could make it feel like home. And now it was just me. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you set listening from. I had spent decades serving in the military, far away from home, where I fought battles of strategy and intellect. But that was before I became a relic in the eyes of my children. Now I found myself sitting in this house, staring at the fading echoes of what had once been. The phone rang, cutting through the stillness like a jagged knife. I glanced at the caller ID, Laura. My daughter, the one who used to be my closest ally, the one who looked up to me, the one who used to care. I answered, forcing my voice steady. Hey, sweetheart, what's going on? Her voice came through, cold and distant. Dad, I think it's time we had a talk. What about? I asked, trying to keep my tone neutral. About you and the company, she said, a slight tremble in her voice, as if unsure of her own words. We've been talking, Eric and I, and we both think you are holding us back. It's time for you to retire, to step aside. I felt the world tilt beneath me. Retire? Step aside? The words echoed in my mind like a curse. I don't understand, I whispered, my breath catching in my throat. What do you mean? I built that company. That's buys my legacy, Laura. I could hear her shift in her chair, the sound of paper rustling. I know, Dad, but it's not the same anymore. You sept you're, you sept you're too old for this. We don't seps need you in the business anymore. My heart sank. I gripped the phone harder, trying to steady myself. You've got to be kidding me. After all this time, after everything I've done, you think I've done just some old man who seft's no longer useful. There was a pause, and then a quiet sigh. I'm sorry, Dad, but it's sips for the best. It's sips time for you to enjoy your retirement. The words cut through me like a razor. I could hear the finality in her voice. She wasn't just telling me to step aside. She was telling me that I no longer mattered, not to her, not to anyone. I could feel my chest tighten, the sting of betrayal rising within me. This wasn't just about the company anymore. This was about everything. Years of sacrifice, years of fighting, years of building something for them, for my family. And now it was all being taken away, dismissed like it meant nothing. I couldn't hold it in anymore. I've given everything to this family, everything. And this is how you repay me? My voice cracked. Do you even care about what I've done for you? For us? There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then Laura Sepp's voice, softer this time, almost apologetic. I don't Septa want to fight, Dad. We just think it's Sepp's time to move forward. You will still be fine. You will still have your retirement. You don't Septa need to keep holding on. And just like that, my world shattered. She didn't just let me go, she cut the rope. And in that moment I realized I had lost everything I thought mattered. My family, my legacy, my dignity. But in that same breath, something inside me snapped. I wasn't done. I wasn't some old man they could push aside. They had no idea who they were dealing with. I hung up the phone without another word, and as I sat there in the dead silence of the room, I felt something stir within me. A fire I hadn't felt in years. A strategy. A plan. A way to prove them all wrong. I wasn't done. Not by a long shot. I grabbed my phone and dialed a number I hadn't dialed in years. Martin. Lieutenant General Martin. He was the one person who had always respected my mind, my abilities. He knew exactly who I was and what I was capable of. The phone rang once, twice, and then he picked up. Martin, I said, my voice steady now, filled with a quiet determination. It sets time. I need your help. And just like that, I was back in the game. The battle wasn't over. It had only just begun. The house feels empty without her. My wife Sip's death broke me, but what really hurt was watching my children walk away. The cold air in the house felt more suffocating than ever before. It wasn't just the winter chill, it was the silence, the space left behind by Sarah's absence. I had gotten used to the quiet. She'd been gone for over a year now, but there were days when it still felt like she had just stepped out for groceries. The house, the memories, they were all frozen in time. I used to think that I could handle it all. Years in the military had prepared me for the worst. I had seen things, horrible, devastating things, but nothing had prepared me for losing Sarah, losing my partner, losing the person who understood me better than anyone else in this world. It was late one evening when I found myself standing in front of her old mirror, running my fingers over the gold locket she used to wear. The same locket that I had given her when we first married. It felt heavy in my hands, like a reminder of everything that was slipping away. My hand trembled and I cursed under my breath, frustrated that I couldn't even control the simple things anymore. But then I remembered her. How much she had believed in me. How much she had supported me even when I was away. My military career had kept me distant, constantly moving, constantly away. There were moments when I wondered if I had failed her, failed my children by choosing that path. It wasn't just about the company now. It wasn't just about the betrayal my children had shown me. It was about Sarah, how I couldn't protect her from the emotional distance that had begun to wedge its way into our family. I pulled out the old photographs, the ones of her and the kids when they were younger. There was a time when we were a family, a real family, a real family. I looked at those photos and saw the faces of my children, Eric, Laura, their smiles, their laughter. They were so innocent then, so full of love. What had happened? Dad, I don't need you. Laura's voice echoed in my head. The words rang louder now, even as I tried to push them away. I took a deep breath, running my fingers through my hair. It wasn't just about the company anymore. It was about my own failures as a father, as a husband. I could have done more. I should have done more. But now they were all gone. I needed to understand how we had gotten here. I needed to look back, even if it meant reliving the past. I reached for my military records, the ones I had kept hidden away for years. Dossiers, tactical notes, strategies. Those were the things that made me feel like I still mattered. My mind, my intellect, that was what had kept me alive, what had kept me going all these years. But now, even those felt useless. I pulled out the documents and started reading. It took me back to a time when every decision was about life and death, when the stakes were high, but the goals were clear. There was no room for error, no time for second guessing. But family? Family was different. Family was messy. Family had no clear blueprint, no strategy to follow. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the papers in my hands. The weight of it all felt too much. The regret, the distance between me and my children. The realization that I had spent so much time fighting wars, literal wars, and now the most important battle of my life was against something I had never prepared for: my own family. I closed my eyes and thought about the one time I had really felt like I was needed. It was when Sarah was alive, when we worked together hand in hand to build everything we had. When the kids were young, and they looked at me with awe, that was when I felt complete. But now it was gone. The children I had raised, the family I had fought for, they had turned their backs on me, and it wasn't just their rejection that hurt. It was the fact that they never even tried to understand. "I'm not some relic," I whispered, my voice shaking. The words tasted bitter, but I knew they were true. I wasn't ready to give up. Not yet. Not when I still had something to prove. Not when I could still make a difference. But where to begin? I thought about Martin again. The way he had always trusted me. He never saw me as outdated. Never saw me as anything less than a man with experience. A man with a mind that could still think 5 steps ahead. And that's when it hit me. The idea, the strategy. It was simple, really. I wasn't going to fight with my children. Not yet. I wasn't going to fight with anyone. But I would fight for what mattered: my dignity, my legacy, and my place in this family. I grabbed my phone again. The cold light from the screen illuminated my face in the dim room. I scrolled through my contacts and hit dial. "Martin," I said when he answered, my voice calm and steady now, like a man who had finally made peace with what he needed to do. I need you to help me get back in the game. This time there would be no retreat. I had one last chance to take back control. I knew I couldn't let this go. One call to an old colleague, and I was back in the game. They had no idea what I had planned. I stood in the study, staring out the window at the empty yard. The wind howled outside, as if the world itself understood the storm brewing inside me. My children, my own flesh and blood, had thrown me aside like a discarded relic. Their voices echoed in my mind, their dismissive tones weighing heavy on my chest. But instead of crumbling, I felt something shift inside me, a cold fire, a plan taking shape. This wasn't sift over, not by a long shot. I knew I couldn't win this battle by playing by their rules. They thought I was finished. They thought I was irrelevant. But what they didn't know was that I had spent my entire life thinking strategically, navigating chaos, reading people, outmaneuvering enemies. They had no idea what they were dealing with. I reached for the phone on my desk, my fingers brushing against the cold plastic. There was only one person I could trust to help me with this. Martin, Lieutenant General Martin. He had been with me through thick and thin during my military days. He respected me not just as a strategist, but as a man who understood the art of war. He answered on the third ring. Shepard, his voice crackled with recognition. What sip's this about? I need your help, I said, my voice steady, confident. I said I'm going to take back control. The family business itself's mine, and I said I'm not going to let them ruin it. There was a pause, and then a grunt of understanding from Martin. I knew you weren't just done. All right, I knew you weren't just the plan. I smiled, a slow, calculating smile. We're going to start small, Martin. I'm not going to storm the gates just yet. I need information, intel on everything they're doing. I'll need to get a sense of their financials, their weaknesses, and most importantly, I need to secure my position legally. Iwid. We spent the next few hours hammering out the details. Martin would tap into his network of contacts, getting me the information I needed about the company's financials, about the family trust, about everything that might give me leverage. He would also help me track my children's movements, anything that could give me an edge. It wasn't about revenge at first. No, it was about rebuilding my life, reclaiming my place in this world. I sat back in my chair, the weight of the task ahead settling in. The plan was simple, but it was going to take time. Time for the right pieces to fall into place. The next step was finding a legal ally, someone who could help me secure my stake in the business, someone who could help me fight for what I was owed. And that's where Sarah came in. Sarah was my lawyer, and though we hadn't worked together in a while, she knew how to get things done. She was smart, sharp, and knew the ins and outs of corporate law better than anyone. I called her the next day. Sarah, it's Shepard, I said when she picked up. I know it's been a while, she replied, her voice as sharp as ever. What can I do for you? I need your help, I said, the words coming easier now. I said I'm trying to secure my position in the family business. I need you to help me navigate the legal side of things. The trust, the paperwork, everything. There was a brief silence on the other end. Are you sure about this? It sounds like a pretty big step. I'm sure, I said, determination flooding my veins. They tried to push me out, but I one set let them. I built this, Sarah. I one set let them take it away. She sighed, and I could almost hear her weighing the decision. All right, Shepard. It may still help you. But this isn't going to be easy. You know that, right? I know, I replied. But it sets time they learned not to underestimate me. I hung up the phone and leaned back in my chair, letting out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. The pieces were starting to fall into place, but I still had a long way to go. My next move was going to be delicate. I had to bide my time, gather intel, and wait for the perfect opportunity to strike. There was no room for mistakes, not with my children, not with the business, and certainly not with my future. Over the next few weeks, I watched them. I watched Eric and Laura, both of them scrambling to keep things together. They were no longer the children I once knew. They had changed, become more ruthless, more calculating. I saw it in their eyes, the way they dismissed me, the way they treated me like a ghost. But all the while, I kept my distance. I didn't make a move. I watched, waited, and planned. And when the time was right, I would strike. I sat across from the lawyer, the papers laid before me, the family trust, the documents, everything I needed to take back what was mine. It had been weeks since I spoke to Sarah, and the plan had started to come together. Each piece of the puzzle was slowly falling into place, and I could feel the weight of it all pressing down on me, but it was the kind of pressure that sharpened the mind. Every step had to be calculated, precise. There could be no mistakes. Sarah had made sure I had everything I needed. The family trust documents, financial records, and even the small details I had forgotten about, she'd uncovered it all. We were closer than ever to securing my position, but I knew the real battle was only beginning. The legal groundwork was solid, but now it was time to build my real leverage allies. I met Sarah at the law office. The smell of old paper and the sound of clicking keys filled the air as we sat across from each other. The light from the desk lamp cast shadows on her face, making her look sharper, more focused. It wasn't the first time I'd sought her help, but this time it felt different. It felt like a war was about to begin. She handed me a stack of papers, each one more important than the last. "Everything that was in order," she said, her voice steady but with an edge of concern. "But you sit are walking a fine line here. If you do this wrong, it could be the end for you." I skimmed through the documents. The family trust, the business contracts, the legal loopholes that I could exploit. It was all there. My fingerprints, my efforts from years ago. The papers were a map, a trail back to what was mine. "We have come too far to back down now," I replied, my voice low and controlled. "They think I sep finished, but I sep just getting started." Sarah didn't look convinced. She leaned back in her chair, crossing her arms. "This isn't set a game, Shepherd. You set not just fighting for a business. You set for fighting for your legacy, your family. If this backfires, it one set just cost you the company. It set cost you everything." I met her gaze, unwavering. "I sep not afraid of losing, I sep lost everything already. But I once sep let them take what sep's mine." She gave a reluctant nod and slid another document across the table. "Then this is your next move." She didn't need to explain. I knew exactly what it was. The family trust. The documents I had signed years ago, never imagining a day when I would have to fight for them. But that day had come. I had a right to what was mine, and now it was time to take it back. As I took the papers in hand, I thought about Eric and Laura. The way they had dismissed me, their words still fresh in my mind. "You're holding us back. We don't need you." But they were wrong. They needed me. They needed my mind, my experience. They just didn't know it yet. I wasn't going to rush into this. I wasn't going to make a move until the time was right, but the pieces were falling into place. I could feel it in the air. Over the next few days, I reached out to my old contacts. A few trusted people, former colleagues from my military days who had since turned to business. One of them was an old friend, Lieutenant General Martin, who had connections in the corporate world. I needed him now more than ever. I arranged a meeting with Martin at a local diner, somewhere quiet, away from prying eyes. We sat in a booth near the window, the city bustling outside, but inside it was just the two of us. I could feel the weight of what was about to happen, but I didn't show it. I leaned in, my hands folded on the table. "Martin," I began, "I need your help. You know what SEP's at stake. It SEP's not just the business. It SEP's everything I SEP's worked for." He didn't respond immediately. He studied me, his eyes sharp, calculating. Finally he nodded. "I SEF always respected your mind, Shepherd. And I know what this means to you. You SEF got my support, but we need to play this carefully." "I SEF been careful," I said, my voice firm. "I SEF laid the groundwork. I SEF though got the legal documents. I SEF though got Sarah backing me. But I need more. I need intel on the business, on my kids. I need to know exactly what they SEF they're doing, and how far they SEF they're willing to go to keep me out." Martin took a slow breath, then nodded again. "I SELF do what I can. You know people in high places, Shepherd. I SELF reach out to a few contacts and get you the information you need. Just be ready. This is going to get complicated." I wasn't afraid of complications. I thrived on them. I had spent my entire life navigating through chaos, understanding people, reading situations. Now it was time to turn the tables. The meeting ended with a handshake, and as I walked out of the diner, I felt a surge of adrenaline. The plan was in motion. No one could stop me now. I would take back my legacy. And this time I wasn't just fighting for the business, I was fighting for my family's respect. The phone call came in, and my daughter Sips's voice trembled. She needed me, but this time I wouldn't let it come running. It was late afternoon when I received the call. The number on the screen was familiar. Laura, my daughter. My stomach clenched instinctively. After everything that had happened, after the way she had dismissed me, I didn't know if I was ready to hear what she had to say, but I answered, anyway. Dad, I need you, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I don't know what to do. Eric Sip's been making decisions without consulting me, and everything that's falling apart. Please, I need your help. I leaned back in my chair, the weight of her words sinking in. It was exactly what I had been waiting for, an opening, a crack in their armor. She was vulnerable, and for the first time in months, she was reaching out. But it wasn't the kind of help she wanted. She wasn't calling for my guidance as a father, or seeking advice from a trusted ally. No, she was calling because she was losing control of the situation, and she wanted me to fix it. I could hear the panic in her voice, the desperation. She was caught in a situation where the walls were closing in, and now, for the first time in a long while, she needed me. But it wasn't for the reasons I would have wanted. It wasn't about family or love. It was about business, about power. I could have said yes. I could have gone running to help her, to salvage whatever was left of the business, to fix what Eric had broken. But I didn't. I couldn't. Not anymore. I took a deep breath, feeling the weight of my decision settle in. I said, I'm sorry, Laura. I can help you. Her silence on the other end of the line stretched for what felt like an eternity. I could hear her breathing, steady but with a slight tremor. Finally she spoke again, her voice low and hurt. Why? Dad, we Siv family. You Siv always been there for me. I let out a sigh, feeling a pang of regret. But I didn't back down. I've always been there for you, Laura. But not like this. I've spent years fighting for the family, fighting for what was mine. You and Eric, you've pushed me aside. Now you want me to come back and fix your mistakes? I can't do that. You have to learn how to fix things on your own. There was a long pause, and then she finally spoke, her voice cracking. I didn't mean to push you away, Dad. But you Sep are not the same anymore. Things have changed. We need you, but we also need to move forward without you. The words hit harder than I expected. Not just the rejection, but the realization that they had truly moved on, that they didn't need me in the way they once did, that the foundation of our family, the bond that had once been unshakable, had been irreparably altered. They had built their own lives, their own empire, without me. But that was okay. They thought they didn't need me. They thought they could move on without me, but I was about to show them exactly how wrong they were. I am done being your safety net, Laura, I said, my voice steady but cold. Made my decision. This is my last word on the matter. I hung up the phone, letting the finality of the conversation settle in. For a moment, I just sat there in the silence of my office, feeling the weight of what I had just done. I had denied her, I had turned my back on her when she needed me the most. But in doing so, I had made the most important move in this entire game. I had taken back control. For the past few weeks I had been watching them, watching the company, watching every decision they made, and now I knew exactly what I had to do next. I picked up the phone again, this time dialing Sarah's number. She answered on the first ring. You were right, I said, my voice low and purposeful. It's Step's time to make our move. I could hear her shift in her seat, the sound of papers rustling. What's Sep's the plan? The family trust, it's time to make them see who Sep's in charge. We Sep got everything we need. The documents are in order. I Sep got the leverage, and now we play our hand. Are you sure about this? She asked. The caution in her voice not lost on me. You you're crossing a line here, Shepherd. Once we do this, there's no going back. I nodded, though she couldn't see it. There steps no turning back. They Sepp forced my hand. Now I Sepp am going to take what Sepp's mine. I hung up, the weight of the decision still hanging in the air. This wasn't just about the business anymore. This was about proving to myself that I wasn't the relic they thought I was. This was about regaining my place, not just in the business, but in my own life. And I was ready. Ready to take back everything that had been stripped from me, piece by piece. The game had begun. The pressure Sepp's mounting, but I Sepp got one last card to play. They won Sepp see it coming. The days stretched on, and as the weeks passed, I could feel the weight of the plan pressing against me. It was no longer just about the business deal. It was no longer about reclaiming what was mine. It was about sending a message to my children, to everyone who had ever doubted me. The stakes had grown higher than I ever imagined. Every move I made was calculated, precise. I couldn't afford to slip up. I had been biding my time, gathering information, putting the pieces in place. But now it was becoming clear. The closer I got to the final move, the more everything seemed to unravel. I watched Eric and Laura, both of them scrambling, trying to keep their grip on the company that they thought was theirs. They had no idea what was coming. The pressure was starting to show on their faces. Eric had always been the more confident one, the one who thought he could do everything himself. But now I could see the cracks forming. I could see the fear in his eyes when he spoke about the business, about everything he thought he had control over. And Laura. She was falling apart too. The cracks weren't just in the business, they were in her too. I could feel the change in her demeanor every time we spoke. It wasn't just about the company anymore, it was about the relationship we had, what had been lost between us. I had been everything to her once, but now I was the problem. Their desperation was palpable, and that desperation was my advantage. The day I had been waiting for arrived. Martin came through. His contacts had delivered exactly what I needed. Information on their internal dealings, their legal loopholes, their mistakes, the things they thought they had buried. Now I had them all in my hands. I sat in my study, reviewing the documents Martin had sent over. Each page was a revelation, a new layer of the truth they had tried to hide. The family trust, business contracts, their financial records. There was nothing they could hide from me now. My phone rang, snapping me out of my thoughts. It was Laura again. She was calling for the second time in as many days. I hadn't answered the first time, but this time I knew I had to. She had no idea what was happening, what was about to unfold. "Dad, we need to talk." Her voice came through, shaky but determined. "Eric Sipp's gone too far this time. He Sepp's making decisions without consulting me, and it's Sepp's going to ruin everything. Please, you have to help." I stared at the phone for a moment before answering. I could hear the panic in her voice. She didn't know what she was asking for, what she was really asking for. This was my moment. "Laura," I said, keeping my voice steady. "I Sepp already told you I can set help you anymore." There was a pause on the other end of the line. She was taken aback, and I could feel the hurt in her response. "What? You stir just going to turn your back on me again?" I leaned back in my chair, feeling the weight of the decision. "I Sepp already turned my back on you, Laura. You and Eric, both of you. You, Esp, had your chance to fix this. Now it's Sepp's my turn." I hung up before she could say anything else. The lines had been drawn. There was no going back now. I reached for the documents in front of me. It was time to act. I had one final card to play. The family trust. I had everything I needed now. The legal backing, the intel on their weaknesses, the documents that tied their fates to mine. I called Sarah. She had been invaluable throughout this process, helping me navigate the legal side of things. She answered quickly, as always. "I am ready to move forward," I said, my voice calm but filled with purpose. "It's Sepp's time to use the family trust." I could hear the hesitation in her voice. "Are you sure about this? Once you take this step, there's Sepp's no turning back." "I've already made my decision," I replied. "They once set see it coming. I Sepsum done waiting. I Sepsum going to take what Sepsum's mine." We spent the next few hours going over the final steps of the plan. It was all set now. The documents were in place. The timing was perfect. The leverage was mine, it was all coming to a head. The tension in the air was thick. I could feel it. The moment was drawing near. I wasn't just playing for the company anymore. This was bigger. This was about respect, about proving to my children and to myself that I was still the man I used to be. But more than anything, I wanted to show them that they couldn't push me aside. They couldn't take everything from me without consequences. The pressure was mounting, and I could feel the weight of it all, but I didn't flinch. I didn't back down. I was ready. The boardroom was filled with faces, all waiting for me to fail. But they didn't know I was the one holding all the cards. The day had come, the day I had been planning for, the day everything was supposed to fall into place. The family business, my legacy, was on the line, and I was about to take my seat at the table once again. I had spent years building this empire. Blood, sweat, and tears. Every decision, every move had been calculated. And now it was my children, Eric and Laura, who were at the helm. Or so they thought. The boardroom was cold, sterile, and filled with people who didn't know me. Not really. They didn't know the man I used to be. The strategist who had fought in battles of both war and business. They only saw the older version of me, the one they thought was a relic. I entered the room, my footsteps echoing on the polished floor. The board members looked up, their eyes shifting nervously as I took my seat at the head of the table. Eric was sitting across from me, his expression hard, his jaw clenched. Laura sat beside him, her eyes darting from me to the rest of the room. They didn't know what was coming, and it was almost satisfying to see the discomfort on their faces. Everyone, thank you for joining us today, I said, my voice steady, strong. I know there's a lot at stake, and I appreciate your time. I could see their eyes narrowing, the tension palpable. They knew something was coming, but they didn't know what. They had no idea that I was about to take control. Let's get down to business, I continued, flipping open the folder in front of me. Inside was everything I needed: financial statements, family trust documents, and the most critical piece, the clause in the trust that gave me control of the company. It was all there, my leverage, my win. I turned the papers toward the board, letting them see the contents. As you can see, I said, my voice cutting through the silence, I've reviewed the company's financials. There's been some mismanagement, and I've come across some irregularities in the family trust that I think we should address. Eric leaned forward, his fingers tapping on the table. What are you trying to say, Dad? His voice was laced with annoyance, but there was an edge of fear in it that he couldn't hide. What I'm saying, Eric, I said, pausing for effect, is that I have the right to take back control of this company. And today I'm doing just that. The room fell silent. I could feel the weight of my words hanging in the air, the realization dawning on them. The trust had always been the foundation of the family business, and with it I held the key to everything. Laura's face turned pale, her lips pressed tightly together. She tried to maintain her composure, but I could see the panic in her eyes. She knew what this meant. And Eric, he was just starting to understand the full weight of the situation. This isn't how it's supposed to go, Dad, Laura said, her voice trembling. You are supposed to retire. You can just come back and take everything from us. It's worked hard to build this. It's yours now. I could hear the desperation in her voice, but it wasn't enough to change anything. They had made their move. They had underestimated me. Now it was my turn. You think you've built this on your own? I asked, my voice cold. I was the one who laid the foundation. I was the one who made this possible. And you, I glanced at Eric, who was now fidgeting in his seat. You've done nothing but try to tear it down. I pulled the trust documents closer, tapping the paper with my finger. I've been watching everything, every move you Seps made. Every move you Seps tried to push through without my knowledge. But here's Seps, the truth. I Seps am the one with the final say, and today I Seps taking what Seps mine. There was a long pause as the board members exchanged glances, unsure of how to react. Some were nervous, others were indifferent, but all of them were witnessing history. The moment I had been waiting for was finally here. Eric stood up, his chair scraping loudly against the floor. This is insane, Dad. You can just walk in here and take control like this. You don't set belong here anymore." I didn't flinch. I had heard his words before, but this time they carried no weight. The moment had arrived, and I wasn't backing down. "I belong here because I built this, and I set taking it back." I turned to the board, my gaze steady. "I have the necessary documents, and I SEP already spoken to Sarah. The legal process is in motion. It SEP's over. The company is mine again." The room was silent for a moment, and then one of the board members, an older man who had been quiet the entire meeting, finally spoke up. "Mr. Shepherd, I believe it's SEP's time we review the trust and the family SEP's position moving forward." I smiled, feeling the victory settle in. I couldn't said agree more. As I sat back in my chair, I could see the weight of the moment hitting my children, the realization that I was back in control, that I had won. The look on their faces, Eric's frustration and Laura's shock, was everything I had hoped for. They had thought they could push me aside, but today they learned a hard lesson. I had won. Not just the business, but my dignity, my legacy, the respect I had been fighting for. And as the board members began to discuss the next steps, I felt a quiet satisfaction settle over me. The battle had been long, and it had been hard, but I had come out on top. In the end, I had proved them wrong. I wasn't a relic, I was still the man they needed. They might hate me now, but one day they said'll understand. I said I've won everything I wanted, but I said I've lost so much more. It had been a week since the boardroom confrontation, since I took back what was rightfully mine. The family business, the one I had built from the ground up, was in my hands once again. I had won the battle. I had proven my worth. But the victory felt hollow. I sat in my study looking out the window at the same scene that had greeted me for years. The yard, the trees, the house, everything that used to feel like home now felt like a distant memory. Even though I had regained control of the business, the damage to my family, to my relationships, was irreparable. I couldn't stop thinking about what it had cost me. My children, Eric and Laura, hadn't spoken to me since the meeting. They were furious, and rightfully so. I had taken everything from them, their position in the business, their sense of control, and worst of all, their trust in me. I could feel it, the weight of what I had done. The victory, though sweet, came with a price. I had done what I set out to do. I had reclaimed my legacy. But in the process I had fractured what was left of my family. I had taken away their future, and in return I had ensured my own. I couldn't even bring myself to call them. I had tried a few times, but each time I picked up the phone, I was met with silence. No response from Eric, no response from Laura. I could hear their voices in my mind, their anger, their hurt, and it wasn't just anger at the business. It was anger at me, at what I had done to them. And the truth was, I didn't know if there was any way to fix it. They thought I had betrayed them. They thought I had robbed them of their future. But what they didn't understand was that I wasn't doing this out of malice. I was doing it because they needed to learn a hard lesson about respect, about loyalty, about what it takes to build something that lasts. I thought about Sarah, the lawyer who had been instrumental in helping me win this battle. She had warned me about the fallout. "You set you're playing a dangerous game, Shepard," she had said. "You can expect them to just forgive you. This is going to change everything." She was right. I could feel it in my bones. The walls that had once held my family together were crumbling. I had no idea if I could ever rebuild what I had lost. I didn't regret taking control of the business. I didn't regret proving them wrong. What I regretted was the cost. The emotional cost. The cost to my relationship with my children. They had been so eager to push me aside, so eager to take what was mine, that they never understood the gravity of what they were doing. And now, neither of us would ever be the same. But there was something else, something I hadn't expected. Even though my children had turned their backs on me, I couldn't help but feel a sense of satisfaction. I had been written off as irrelevant, a relic of the past, but I had fought. I had won. I had reclaimed my place in the world. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I mattered again. My mind, my strategies, my experience, it was all worth something. I wasn't done yet. But as I sat in the silence of my office, staring at the empty room, I couldn't ignore the ache in my chest. the loneliness, the emptiness that had replaced the pride and joy I once felt when I looked at my children. I had won the battle, but I had lost so much more in the process. And deep down, I knew that the victory I had claimed, no matter how sweet, would never be enough to heal the wounds I had inflicted on my family. The price of revenge, of reclaiming what was mine, was far greater than I had ever imagined. I thought winning this deal would fill the void. But in the end, all I got was the empty feeling of having lost everything I cared about. The business was mine again. I had regained control, outsmarted my children, and secured my legacy. I should have felt triumphant. I should have felt like a man who had conquered the world. But instead, all I felt was an emptiness, a hollow ache in my chest that no victory could fill. I sat in the boardroom, the same room where I had taken back what was rightfully mine. The walls seemed to close in on me now, the once proud business feeling like a prison I had built for myself. I had spent so much time focusing on reclaiming what was taken from me that I hadn't stopped to think about the cost. The price of this victory was more than I could have ever imagined. Eric hadn't called. Laura hadn't reached out. They were gone, and with them so was any semblance of the family we once had. I had fought for the business, for my dignity, but in doing so, I had lost my children. And what was the point of all this? What was the point of reclaiming everything if there was no one left to share it with? I walked through the empty hallways of the office, my footsteps echoing against the cold walls. It was surreal, walking through a place that had once been full of life, full of laughter. Now it was just a business. Nothing more, nothing less. I had won the war, but the spoils felt worthless. I had played the game, and I had played it well. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. Something I couldn't buy back with all the success in the world. The truth was, I had been so consumed by the idea of winning that I hadn't stopped to think about what I would lose in the process. I had sacrificed my relationship with my children for what? Power? Money? Respect? I sat down at my desk, staring at the papers in front of me. The contracts were signed. The deal was done. The company was back in my hands, just as I had always intended. But I couldn't shake the thought that, in my pursuit of redemption, I had lost the one thing that truly mattered: my family. I thought about all the years I had spent away, fighting wars, making decisions that affected lives. I thought about the time I had lost with my children, the moments I would never get back, and I wondered, was it worth it? Was the victory, the business, the respect, worth the cost of losing the people I loved most? I remembered my wife, Sarah, how she used to tell me that family was everything, that it didn't matter how successful I was in the world of business or war, what mattered was the people who stood by you. She was right, and now she was gone, and I was left with nothing but a broken family and an empty business empire. I stood up, walking toward the window. The city below was bustling with life, but all I could see was the reflection of myself in the glass, a man who had won everything but lost everything in the process. And then it hit me. The realization that I had been searching for. This wasn't about justice. It wasn't about proving a point or reclaiming what was mine. This was about redemption. And true redemption wasn't about winning. It was about forgiveness. It was about healing the wounds I had caused, the damage I had done. It was about rebuilding the family I had destroyed, even if that meant admitting I was wrong. I didn't need to win the business. I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. What I needed was to make things right with the people I loved. I needed to go to Eric and Laura and apologize. I needed to show them that I wasn't just a man fighting for control. I was a father, a grandfather, someone who wanted to heal the rift I had created. The truth was, the company didn't matter. The power didn't matter. What mattered was that I had lost the trust of my children, the people who mattered most in this world, and it was time to fix that. I picked up the phone and dialed Laura's number. The line rang for what felt like an eternity before she answered. "Dad?" Her voice was hesitant, guarded. "I know I've hurt you, Laura," I said, my voice soft. "I know I've made mistakes, and I know I've pushed you away. But I want you to know that I'm sorry. I never meant for it to come to this." There was silence on the other end, and for a moment I thought she might hang up. But then she spoke. "I don't know if I can forgive you, Dad," she said, her voice breaking, "but I said I'm willing to try." And in that moment, I realized something that I had missed all along. The true price of redemption was not about what you won, but about what you were willing to let go. I had won the business, but I had lost my family. Now I had to fight to get them back, and that in itself was the true measure of justice. I didn't just win the deal. I reclaimed my dignity. But now the question is what sips left. The silence in the house was deafening. The business was mine again, but the victory felt distant, like a shadow that loomed over everything but never quite touched the soul. I had spent so many years fighting for control, for respect, for a place in the world, and now that I had it, I found myself standing at the edge of a different battle, a battle I hadn't expected. The business was thriving, the trust had been restored, but what about my family? What about the years I had lost, the moments I could never get back? What about the people who had once been everything to me? And now they were strangers. I sat in my study, the same study where I had first decided to fight for my legacy. The room felt smaller now, as if the walls were closing in on me. I could hear the faint hum of the city outside, the noise of life continuing without me, and yet all I could feel was emptiness. I had won, but at what cost? The phone had been quiet for days now. Eric hadn't called, Laura hadn't reached out. My attempts to repair the rift between us had fallen on deaf ears. I couldn't blame them. I had spent so much time fighting for the wrong things. I had placed all my energy into winning the battle for the company, and in doing so I had lost the battle for their hearts. I leaned back in my chair staring at the picture of Sarah on the desk. It was a picture of us from years ago, when things were simpler, when we still believed in the future, in what we could build together. She used to tell me that life was about more than just winning. It was about the people who walked beside you, the people who shared the journey, and I had forgotten that. Now, I was alone. But I couldn't stay like this. I couldn't keep living in the past, in the shadows of what I had lost. I had spent so much of my life focused on my legacy, on what I could leave behind, that I had forgotten to live in the present. I had forgotten to build the relationships that mattered most. It wasn't too late. I realized that now. It wasn't too late to make things right. It wasn't too late to rebuild the family I had torn apart, to rebuild the trust I had shattered. But it would take time. It would take patience. It would take more than just words. I stood up, the weight of the decision pressing down on me. The business would always be a part of me. It was my legacy, yes, but it didn't define me. My family, that was what defined me. And it was time to fight for them. I grabbed my phone and dialed Laura's number. It rang 3 times before she picked up. Dad. Her voice was cautious, wary. She had every right to be. I had done nothing to earn her trust back. I know I've hurt you, I said, my voice steady but filled with regret. And I know I've made mistakes. I should have been there for you, for Eric. I shouldn't have let the business come between us. But I want you to know that I'm not just doing this for me. I'm doing this for us, for our family. There was a long silence on the other end, and I held my breath, waiting. I don't know if I can forgive you, Dad, she said softly. I don't know if we can ever go back to how things were. But maybe we can start over. Maybe we can try. My heart surged, a mix of relief and sorrow flooding through me. I said, I'll take whatever you start willing to give, Laura. I know it settle's going to take time, but I settle's here and I settle ready to rebuild. It wasn't a complete reconciliation, but it was a start, a small step toward healing. I ended the call, feeling the weight of it lift slightly. I wasn't sure what the future held for us, but I knew this. There was still hope. I hadn't lost everything. Not yet. I sat back in my chair, staring out the window. The world was still turning, life still moving forward, and for the first time in a long time I felt like I was part of it. I hadn't just reclaimed my business. I hadn't just proven my worth. I had reclaimed my dignity, my sense of self, and now I had the chance to rebuild the most important part of my life, my family. I wasn't the same man I had been when I started this journey. The victory wasn't in the business. It wasn't in the deal. It was in the realization that true legacy isn't just about what you leave behind. It's about the people you leave with. And as long as there was still time, there was still hope. I thought I could rebuild everything. I thought I could fix the past, but maybe, just maybe, it was never about fixing it at all. It's strange, isn't it? How time has a way of changing the way we look at things. I used to believe that success was the only thing that mattered, that reclaiming my business, proving my worth, that those were the things that would bring me peace. But as I sit here now, in the quiet of my office, the city outside bathed in the last light of the setting sun, I realize that what I thought was the prize was only part of the journey. Yes, I've regained control of the family business. Yes, I've proven to myself and to my children that I still have what it takes. But there's something deeper that I've learned through all of this. It's not the legacy you build in the world that counts. It's the legacy you build with the people who matter most. I had fought so hard to prove myself, to prove that I wasn't a relic, that my experience, my knowledge, still had value. And in the process, I lost sight of what truly mattered. My family, my relationship with my children, those are the things I had taken for granted, assuming they would always be there, no matter how much I focused on the business, on winning. But now, as I reflect on everything I've been through, I see it all differently. My children, they've always been my legacy. Everything I did, every decision I made, I did for them. But I had lost sight of that. I had let the drive for success consume me, and in doing so, I lost the very thing I was trying to protect. The conversation with Laura was a turning point. It wasn't a grand gesture, a moment of dramatic reconciliation, but it was a beginning, a start, and that's all I needed, a chance to rebuild. To earn back their trust, not by winning, but by showing them that I could still be the father they once knew. Eric, too, he hadn't called, but I knew that wouldn't last forever. I had reached out, left the door open. I had to, I couldn't fix everything all at once, but I could be patient. I could let them see that I wasn't just fighting for control. I was fighting for them, for the future of our family. I think back to Sarah now. The way she used to tell me that life wasn't just about business or success. It's the people who matter, she would always say. And now, more than ever, I understand what she meant. I had been so focused on securing the future of the company, securing my legacy, that I forgot the most important thing, securing my place in their lives. I've made my peace with that now. I've accepted that it's never too late to change, to rebuild, to find a new way forward. The business is mine. The respect I fought for is mine. But what I'm truly reclaiming now is my family. It will take time, I know that. But I'm ready. So here I sit, at the end of it all, reflecting on what I've learned. I've spent years building empires and winning battles, but now I see that the most important thing I can build is something much more personal, a family, a legacy of love and respect, not just wealth and power. In the end, it's not about what you leave behind, it's about who you leave behind with, and that's the legacy I'll fight for now. I didn't expect it to be easy. I didn't expect them to forgive me all at once. But I can finally say, for the first time in years, that I sit at peace with the choices I made. The journey is always harder than we expect, especially when we're looking for something we can't always put into words. After all the battles, after all the struggles, I've come to realize that it's not the victories in the boardroom that matter. It's the peace we find in our hearts when we stop fighting the things that really matter. I've learned that my greatest legacy isn't in the company I built or the wealth I amassed. It's in the lessons I passed down to my children, the example I set, and the love we had as a family. That's what I want them to remember. Sure, there were times I felt like I lost it all, but maybe losing the illusion of control was the best thing that could have happened. It gave me the chance to rebuild, to refocus on what truly mattered. The business, the house, the success, all of that can be replaced, rebuilt, or left behind. But family, trust, love, that's what I should have nurtured the most. So, what's left for me now? I've won back my respect. I've earned my place at the table. But I've also learned to let go of my pride. The next chapter? Reconnecting with Eric and Laura. Building bridges instead of walls. One conversation at a time. It'll take time, and I'm prepared for that. I used to believe my legacy was built in boardrooms with contracts and business strategies. But I see now that my legacy is built in the quiet moments. The smiles we share, the forgiveness we give, The family that still stands, though battered, still standing. And I'm grateful for that, more than I can say. This journey is far from over. It's just begun. But now it's a journey that I know I'm not walking alone.